Good afternoon. Welcome to Ripples Rising, empowering voices, creating waves of change. And today I am so honored to have Arkansas House Representative Diana Gonzales Worthen. She has demonstrated a great commitment, a deep commitment to serving the people of Arkansas, not only through her work at our state capitol, but also through her advocacy for families and vulnerable adults. Join us while we discuss public service and the challenges of leadership. Welcome, Diana.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you for having me here.
Oh, absolutely. My goodness, I've known Diane off and on for about 16 years, and we just started visiting more so in the last 6 or 8 months or so. She saw I was kind of dabbling around trying to get my bill passed last year for fingerprinting background checks. So I'm really excited to learn more of the innuendos about our state government and about the women, the challenges that she has faced. She disclosed to me you ran 4 times?
Yes.
4 times to become the Arkansas State Representative. What kept you going? What was your motivation?
Well, yes, I ran, and initially I was asked to run, and actually dear friend Angela Schnurley asked me to run, and I had never really thought about running for office. I was in student government in high school, student council, loved it, and that was probably my first introduction, you know. But to think about, now running for state rep, that was very big and didn't really know all of the ins and outs, but the reason I was asked was because I was already doing a lot of the work in the community, helping, especially with Northwest Arkansas, having the largest immigrant population, 3rd in the nation, when we had the census, mid-90s to 2000. Lots of growth in this area, and I was working in the public schools. At that time, I'm a science teacher by trade, and there were a lot of misconceptions and a lot of assumptions about people who looked different, who had different cultures, beliefs, language, and for the most part, people thought that the Latino immigrants were going to all move away, eventually, but as it turned out, they were here to stay. They wanted to come to America, come to Arkansas, in this case, and make a better life for their families, which is the immigration story that we all have. My grandparents were the same. They moved here from San Luis Potosí, Mexico, and they came here, for a better dream, for better lives, for their families, and so that dream continues. However, when a community is not accustomed to that, then you start to see a lot of challenges, and so in talking with other women in my community, they too were seeing the challenges, and sometimes they were the only Latina working in their workplace, and a lot was placed on them, maybe interpreting here, there, on top of what they were already doing, or them maybe bringing things up, and sometimes they were well received and sometimes not. And so so basically, when you think about those kinds of things, they were all concerned. We were all concerned about the community. So I thought, why don't we look at, maybe we could start like a Hispanic women's group in this area. And
is that called how?
It's now, yes, Hispanic Women's Organization of Arkansas, HWOA. And so after all of these friends that I had made throughout Northwest Arkansas and the community, I said, what do you think about starting a Hispanic women's group? When is it going to start? Yes, we need that. Yes. Let me know. And it was just like wildfire. 13 yeses in a row. And so that's when we got to work, really trying to help build bridges, educating people about the community, but not only that, but also what our people are, why they're here, why they came, the dreams that they have for their children, and of course we're seeing them in the schools. And so there was a lot of need, and we all wanted to do something about it. And so that was kind of the first, doing that. So eventually, Hispanic Women's Organization basically they do scholarships, they have the big festival, they raise money for scholarships, and then and then they have they have the Cinco de Mayo festival. They have an annual conference, and then they've moved on to do citizenship classes and the like. They do computer classes for women. You know, they've done citizenship classes that I mentioned earlier, and so just things that women were wanting the skills so that they could do better and help their kids and the like. And so during that time, that was in 1999 when the organization was founded, and then a few years later, then I was asked, well, what, you know, you're doing this work, what do you think about, you know, running for office? And I said, well, I need to check with my family. I need to find out more about it. And no, I made the decision, yes. And then once I started letting people know, it was yes, of course, absolutely. I had a lot of support, and people came on board. And at that time, I mean, I was a newbie and ended up losing in the primary, but I was able to get my feet wet and you know, and just get in there and work hard. And
she stepped up.
Yeah, you know, I did, and it was a little scary at first, and but you do it because you care about your community. You do it because you want all your community represented at the table, especially at that policy making table. And when you have missing voices, then that policy may not work for your community. And that's the thing, is when you're working on policy and it eventually turns into a bill and then it becomes a law, it impacts every Arkansan, some more than others, but that law is across the state. So it's not just the city that's impacted or the county, it's the entire state. And
it ripples across the state.
That's right. And so that's so those were big lessons. And then I just continued working. And then eventually came 2012. Decided to run again. Was asked, and then my lessons learned basically was not to give up. And you know, you don't. You know, Abraham Lincoln ran a lot, several times, you know, so you can't just run one time and say I lost and that's it. You know, it's you just keep working, and you continue to help serve your community, and so I learned that I really needed to have some direction with my campaign, and so I ended up having a campaign manager, director, and then a finance director. And so, and then they helped bring in the volunteers and other members, and we even had an intern, you know, to help us. And so that was very, very helpful. And I didn't win that race, but I learned about the process of running for office. And I think both times when I ran, the one thing that always remained was that when I would knock a door, people would be really surprised, you know, someone knocking a door.
Someone's knocking the door, you know, face-to-face contact.
That's right.
Ooh.
I had a gentleman, when I first ran, he said, I haven't voted since Kennedy was in office. He said, but you know what? I'm going to go to the polls and I'm going to vote for you.
Oh.
And so, and you know, that it's just one of those things, if you can engage your community voter, you know, why is it? Why should you vote? You know, why should you vote? And so, so that's those are the things that I learned along the way.
You can't complain if you don't vote.
That's right.
Yes.
That is right. And so then comes, fast forward, now new census, and that's the thing. I ran in at each of the censuses. 2000, I ran in 2005. Now 2010, I ran in 2012. Okay. Now we have 2020, right?
Change.
So we had, and every time, you know, you have new district boundaries, and of course Springdale is, you know,
more Latino.
Yes, more Latino, and not only that, but it's growing.
Yes.
And so the district essentially gets a little smaller because you have more people, you know,
in the census of the district.
Yes, in the compact area. And so so 2020 came, and I really wasn't thinking about, you know, running, but I got a call from those same people who had helped me before, and they said, have you looked at the boundaries? I said, no, I really haven't, paid attention to them. And we think you're in this district, and it's a new district because of the growth in Springdale. So we've gained a district. So it's a brand new seat. And it's the first Latino majority seat.
There you go.
And this is your seat. You need to run for it, essentially. And, I thought about it. And so, again, talked to my family and my friends who had supported me both of those other times. Absolutely. What can we do to help? And so then I ran and lost by 109 votes. So
that's the importance of voting. 109.
Yep,
Yes.
109 votes. And it was so, heart-wrenching because we knew that we had the number of people we needed,
They didn't go out to vote.
They didn't go out to vote. So I was, then it was, okay, so we need you to run again. That was so close. And then I'm thinking, oh gosh. I said, I told my family, I would run 3 times and that would be it. Like
three times a charm.
Three strikes, you're out.
That
would be it.
3 times a charm, 3 strikes, you're out.
Yeah.
You still ran again.
I still ran again. So I told my campaign director, I said, okay, the only way I'm going to do this is I need to find out what happened because I lost by 109 votes. What happened? We should have won this race. And so we did our homework. And essentially what happened was about 360 people who I talked to face to face and my volunteers, where we made that one-on-one contact, said they were going to vote, but they didn't go vote. They didn't go to the polls. And so, so one of the things that we learned, the big lesson was, just because a person says that they're going to vote for you, so you can't just take it at face value. Yes, you can put a check mark and say they're going to vote for you, but you have to follow up. And part of it in our situation with District 9, Springdale, we have a lot of first-generation voters, so we have a lot of new citizens. Now they get to vote. But did anyone tell them they had to register to vote?
Oh, there you go.
See, that's what I'm talking about. So there's all of those types of things that we kind of take for granted.
Yes.
But if you're new to the,
you don't know. You just
you're-
go vote.
You just, you don't.
You need to register in the state of Arkansas. You need to register to vote before you can vote.
That's right.
You need in the state of Arkansas. You need to show your ID so you can vote.
Yes. And then one sad moment this last time was that a mom and her daughter, they were going to vote together. And that was so wonderful. It was mom had just become a citizen. Daughter had just turned 18.
Okay.
So they go in together. And then a few minutes later, mom comes back out very quickly. And she said, I couldn't vote. I said, well, what happened? And she wasn't on the voter registration. So she had registered, but it was not in enough time. So in Arkansas, you have to register 30 days. You have to be registered 30 days before the election.
30 days.
And so there's a lot of little rules, like that we just take for granted,
We take for granted.
And so it's always, every time I'm out knocking doors, I'm talking to people, it's voter education.
It is.
And you just have to do it all the time. You don't ever stop doing it. Yeah.
And for a House position, the state positions are every 2 years. Is that
That's
correct?
right.
So you're almost
Running all the time.
running all the time. Running all the time. I won. Yay. Okay. Run again. Every other year.
That's right.
Oh,
That's
my
right.
goodness.
So
What's some of the issues, Diana? So were there some issues in the first time that you ran, you said, oh, well, that needs to be fixed, but the longer you were in it, were you finding more issues?
Yes, healthcare, education, being an educator, just having more resources for education, in health, especially here in this last census, we saw this, mental health resources. There's a major need for that. We know that we don't have enough after-school programs for kids. We don't have enough child care facilities.
No.
So women want to work, okay, but
what's the point of working? You got to pay child care as much as you would be making.
that's right.
I know.
Or it's more.
More.
In some cases, it's more. And so so it just doesn't work out. So, you know, the longer I'm in it, the more I see. And again, well, part of that too is that the people who voted for you, they let you know what's on their mind and what needs fixing and what needs to be looked at again. And that's really neat, because for the, you know, for someone in your community to really trust you and to trust your judgment, know that they're gonna, you know, they can count on you.
They can count on you.
Maybe it's not always gonna go the way we wanted, but we can sure try. And sometimes it takes several terms for something to pass.
Yes.
You know, so that's the other thing too that I have learned, is that it doesn't just happen like you introduce a bill and then it doesn't pass. You think it's going to pass and it doesn't pass.
There's one question. What was one of the most surprising things you were asked to look at or recognize and try to get a bill or something in your community? Was there anything, oh, you hadn't thought about that before? Well, that's really important.
You know, I had a bill that came to me, and it was, at first it just caught me by surprise, because I thought that we were already doing this. But Arkansas is one of 8 states that does not require a pay stub. Now, if you have a certain number of employees, then you have to have a pay stub.
Okay.
But it has been, the pay stub bill has been trying to pass it. Lindsley Smith, former Representative Lindsley Smith, had been trying to pass this bill for years, and it just didn't pass. And you know, I was asked to consider co-sponsoring this bill, and by Senator Letting, and I learned a little bit more about it, and it just caught me by surprise. So that was a big surprise. Like, how can you not do that? I mean, you know.
Yes.
And so when it was introduced as, well, let's look at working first with minors. Okay, and if you think about it, how many times are minors paid and they don't get a pay stub, or they don't know what's been taken out of their check. They don't know the overtime. You know, how can they track that?
Wow.
And so and now all of a sudden, now they've saved money to buy their first car, right? Well, they can't show proof of employment.
Wow.
Because they don't have a pay stub.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yes, and that was a big surprise for me. So I thought, you know, there's a lot riding on this, and there were college students who talked about it, how that, you know, and so how it impacted them. First car, renting an apartment. I mean, you have to show proof that you have a job.
Sure.
You know, and so there's so many things that you have to show proof that you have a job if you're wanting to buy something. And I just thought, wow. And so, no, we ran it, and it almost passed. It almost passed, but it didn't. And so then that was the second big surprise. How can you not pass something like this, you know? But so we're gonna work harder on it. This will go again. We'll introduce it, because it behooves us to do this. And eventually, all people should have a pay stub, you know.
Either a pay stub or what? Could there be a letter from the HR person?
Exactly, something to show proof, you know. HR, and it doesn't have to be paper. It could be electronic. So many people are, you know, they're
send an email.
Yeah, send an email, electronic. Anyway, just something simple, you would think.
Wow.
And then, you know, so that was kind of a big surprise. Big surprise for me. Yeah.
Something Diana was talking about was the process, and you think a bill's going to pass and it doesn't pass. And so I'm going to interject what happened with my bill. I might have done that a little bit on my first episode, but I call it my bill because it's my soul's goal to have caregivers be fingerprinted, background checked. I mean, it's a surprise to many that they are not even background checked, and they are not required to be fingerprinted in the state of Arkansas. When I say these caregivers who are making $10 to $14 an hour are allowed to come into your vulnerable loved one's home, and they might feel entitled to shop around. And for me, being in real estate, that I have been fingerprinted and background checked in the state of Texas and the state of Arkansas. To sell you a piece of dirt, I don't even have to be in your house. So, talk a minute about that, because with my bill, it was presented by a senator. I went to the Senate Committee, Family Health. It passed the Senate Committee, it passed the Senate floor, but it failed at the House Committee, so therefore it didn't go to the House floor. So there's a whole process for it to happen. It's just not that easy.
Right. And that's where all of the different organizations and people, that's where that comes in, because there's so often a bill is introduced in committee and there's no one present to speak for or against the bill. Okay. And then sometimes you do have maybe one or two people speaking for or one or two speaking against, but you may still have a bunch of questions. And so, and then the committee will ask those questions. You know, they'll ask the questions, and so yeah, that does happen. There is a whole process, and when you have different organizations, individuals, the personal stories, but then the different organizations that would be impacted, you start to build your case. This is the reason, this is the impact this is going to have. And so that's what one of the things that I have learned. And like I said, there has been a lot of bills that get introduced, and then you're okay. Well, I guess that sounds, all right,
it's gonna go.
Let's ask some more questions, and then sometimes just nature of asking questions. I ask a lot of questions in my committees, and sometimes just those questions are enough to, well, I need to do some more work on this bill. So that happens too. And sometimes that's all it needs is a little bit more work.
Yes.
Or, a committee member might say, you know what, I would be for this bill if you added XYZ, because we've talked about it and we think that'll make the bill stronger. And so that's kind of the vetting process.
Yes.
It has to be vetted. And the thing is that, again, like kind of what we talked about at the beginning, that bill, if it becomes a law, it impacts every Arkansan. So it's not a little thing.
No, it's not a little thing. It's a statewide thing.
Yeah.
And this is why it's so important. And policy is boring, and laws and bills can be boring, but this is the fabric of America. This is the fabric of us people. And it's very important for people to get out to vote.
Yes.
It's very important. If there's an issue like I've got about fingerprinting background check for caregivers, that I'm rattling cages. I've been rattling cages 4+ years, say 6 years. And it's my soul's goal to get this done. And so we got to wait until next session. Hopefully it'll become law in 2027, and then it will be implemented not until 2028.
Yes.
So
I was gonna about just people that may have impacted.
Yes.
Yeah.
So to be in such a strong position, you must be a strong woman. And so what kind of strong mentors or coaches did you have in your life growing up, Diana?
Yeah. Strong women.
There you go, strong women.
My mother being number one.
There you go. Yes.
She never gave up, and always pushed all of us. I come from a family of 5 girls.
5.
And I'm the oldest, and so and we were taught, my mom and dad both, particularly my mom, you need to be able to live on your own and not depend on anyone.
Right.
And once you find that compatible, equal person, then then you get married, you settle down, but you can do it. You can do it by yourself until that special someone comes around.
That's important for every woman.
And so it's and that's what we learned. And so yes. So when I was asked by a woman. I mentioned Angela Schnurley. And then a lot of other women came on board. And one in particular, I have to say, Dr. Margaret Clark, very dear friend of mine. she immediately, basically, it made sure that I needed to be really, really involved with different organizations. I was involved with some, but not very many. And so, then it was the League of Women Voters, and then Partners of the Americas, and Business Professional Women, and Delta Kappa Gamma, and I mean, just different organizations that I was honored to be a part of, all women-led organizations. And so they became my rallying, ground. Hispanic Women's Organization, One Community, another nonprofit I helped to get started. And so it's like getting your community involved, and I don't know, to me that was when I won my race, and you were saying 3 times is the charm. For me, it was 4 times was the charm. Okay,
never, ever, never give up.
That's right. And I remember I had won my race on Tuesday, and El Vestido Rojo, the red dress event of the American Heart Association, mainly for Latina women. They have a Latina women's event. It was at the Civic Center, and you have to wear a red dress. I bought this red dress to wear there. Okay, and so I went, and immediately I had so many women come up congratulating me, but the one that just really tugs at my heart every time, she told me, she said, I told my daughters about you, and you are their new role model. You are who I want my daughters to be. Wow. And I just never, I was able to win after the 4th time, and I'm the first Latina legislator in the Arkansas Legislature.
Really?
So, yes.
Oh, fantastic.
So that's been interesting, yes.
Oh, okay. So 1 or 2 more questions, about ready to wrap up. With that being said, have you experienced discrimination at the Capitol? Careful there.
I wouldn't say, no, I don't. I wouldn't say, discrimination. Sometimes I think people are not quite sure what to think of me sometimes at times, but I was taught from a very young age, you treat people like you want to be treated, with respect, and being diplomatic. I'm not a yeller and screamer, even though I may not agree with the bill. I'll ask a lot of questions, but I'm going to be diplomatic, and I feel that's important. I feel being cordial. We can disagree, and it's policy. We're trying to do this what's best for the public,
for the people,
for the public. And so, we may not agree always, but let's try to work it out if we can, and that's kind of how I see it. And
the way I see it.
And so
we're all in it together.
And so when I first walked into the House chamber, it's a pretty daunting feeling.
It is.
And to walk in there, and the only thing I could think of was the 30,000 people who I represent.
There you go.
Because that's who you represent when you're there, and you have to vote your district. That's something we learned very early on in our orientation. You vote your district.
That's right.
And so there are times that I might have been,
not totally agreement.
Not in total agreement, but it would have impacted Springdale.
Okay.
And my community, and our community, and that's not good. So I have to say no. I have to say no.
Yeah, because she's representing the people that voted for her, and that's the importance of voting.
Yes.
One last question: what advice would you give to women who feel called to run for a political office?
If you feel called to run for a political office, get involved. I would say, if I were to do it all over again, one of the things that I would do would be get involved, maybe with a campaign, with a particular initiative, like an organization that helps to build policy. They're following certain, like, Arkansas Advocates for Children and Families, the Alzheimer's Association. I mean, there's a lot of different organizations, Appleseed, and that's what they do. They do policy. They follow what's going on, not only in our state, Arkansas, but what's happening across the nation. Okay,
right.
And so you can't do all of that yourself. Okay, so getting involved there, maybe even volunteering there, or volunteering on a campaign.
Yes.
So if you volunteer on someone's campaign, you're really going to see the ins and outs, and you can be thinking, okay, so now when it's my turn to run, I didn't have that advantage. I wasn't, because it just happened so quickly.
Yes.
But I think that's one thing. If I would have, done it all over again, I would have gotten a little bit more involved, so I could see what all is going on, and then jump right back in. And that is something, jump right back in to the organizations that you were a part of, and just keep working. And so I lost in the primary, and that was on a Tuesday. Our party had a picnic on Thursday. 2 days later, and people were surprised to see me there. And I was there, and they were kind of shocked because I had lost. And the person that that won, he was there. And it was like, okay, so I said, but
still
at
here.
the same time, that's right.
Big.
That's right.
That's big.
You can't, when you run for office, someone's going to win and someone's not going to win. Okay, I mean, it's not a tie. If it's a tie, then there'll be a runoff. But you have to accept that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't disclose. I don't believe I ran for County Justice of the Peace last year, JP, and I had signs and I did my postcards. I met a few people. I just thought I had it because nobody knew. I didn't know my JP. So, but I lost, and life rocks on. It's a public humiliation. I mean, there's no tie about it, and there's the vote count, whether it's 109 or 200 or whatever, and life rocks on, and you got to be bigger than that and step out and run again and again and keep running.
That's
Diana,
right.
keep running.
Thank you. I intend to. I'm running for re-election.
What district?
District 9, Springdale.
District 9, Springdale, Arkansas. This is Arkansas House Representative Diana Gonzales Worthen, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jackie. Appreciate it.